2-1.
2-1. Hey everyone. Hello.
Hi. I don't know if it's live actually.
It should be live. We should totally
I'm
be
refreshing Twitch.
Yeah, we are live.
Okay, we're live.
We are totally live. Hello everyone. Hey. So, welcome to Gamer Stories, episode 4, where we have our guest DSB211, who you may know from the Discord, also known as Dahlia. And I'm very excited to have Dahlia here on Gamer Stories for a couple of reasons. One, Dahlia is one of my former students who has been to game night with me multiple times for years now.
Yeah, I think it's been 5 years now.
I think it's been 5 years. And also, little known piece of trivia, was one of the players who did the off-stream dry run of Night Witches so that I could make sure everything was all together for the on-stream version. So it has been super helpful. And is also, and is also a relatively, some people might not actually call you a new gamer anymore. There was a debate about this on Twitter.
I was actually thinking about this because, so I've been playing board games seriously basically since I met you and started going to game night. So that's like that's 5 years now, maybe 6.
Yeah, that feels like a long time.
It does feel like a long time, and also like that's like 6 years of cultivating relationships with people, and like 6 years is a long time to know someone, and like the original members of game night I've known for 6 years now.
Yeah, so I don't know if you get to count really as a new gamer anymore,
but I'm still relatively new because I didn't really start. So I started with board games like Monopoly and Life and things when I was in elementary school, and then the furthest I ever got with board games was like Stratego.
Stratego.
It's actually a really good game.
It is. I really, out of all, so we want to go back to the old days of board games, right? All the Milton Bradley, right?
Yeah.
Stratego was, I think, one of my favorites. I mean, there were some other ones that I was able to get here and there, but Stratego, I love Stratego.
Yeah. So I started with that when I was really young, and I'm only 24. So like I'm a lot younger than like a lot of the other gamers you'll be interviewing or have interviewed. So
well, some people have just hit 30, so you're not a lot younger.
Okay. I'm somewhat younger. But like I just graduated. Yeah. So like I still feel a lot younger than a lot of people. I'm like, you've been an adult for 6 years. That's a long time. And I started with like the classic Milton Bradley type board games, and then I eventually moved into video games. And so I have a super complicated relationship with the term gamer because I started really considering myself a gamer in like 2013, and then
Gamergate happened.
Gamergate happened in 2014.
Yeah. Oh. By the way, everybody in chat, feel free to talk it all up and then also ask us questions and talk to us. We're gonna start some of our opening, and then the floor is open as always with everyone. So what video games were you playing at the time?
So I started with Pokemon Legend of Zelda, but I've only ever played handheld video games. So I've only played like the Game Boy Advance, the DS, the 3DS. I need to get a Switch. So I've never played a full console except a couple of times when I visited friends. But I was playing like a lot of the mainstream games. Yeah. Just the handheld ones, not the full versions. And then I would watch like Let's Plays. So I still like was up to date with the culture and like the storylines. I just like never played them myself.
Mm-hmm.
But then I met you and we started playing board games, and I was like, I like this so much more because there's like a social aspect
Yep.
to it, but also like I feel like a lot of video games streamline the mechanics so much that you're not there isn't the puzzle of figuring out how does this game work.
Yeah. Yeah. This is interesting, right? Because Krellin was like, I hate that video games have taken gamer from us. And I'll just note that like my one is that I get really frustrated when I say, oh, I like RPGs, and people automatically assume I mean video games. I was like, no. It's just like a little bother, just like not a huge bother, but just a little bother in my heart that I have to say tabletop RPGs so that people know what I'm talking about, and that I can't just say RPGs, because I was like, hey, those video game RPGs are video game versions of table. Yeah.
I mean, so I was, when I was really little, my parents would call me a card shark because I was really good at card games. And I didn't play any like super complicated card games. Like I never played like spades or bridge or, but I was like really good at card games, and I had the mind for like figuring out like not card counting, but like figuring out like what are the chances, what has come up. I had the memory for it. I don't have that anymore.
I don't think that's true.
No, but I mean, my all of the card game knowledge that I had has been supplanted by like board games, and like I get into things really deeply. So like I will go and I will find every FAQ and like all the Board Game Geek forums and be like, how does this work exactly? Like when we played Descent, I knew every single class and their mechanics, and I knew every single hero and their FAQs, and yeah, now I don't know that stuff anymore. It's just been supplanted by other information.
I've just turned up your volume. Let me know if that's all right. So it's interesting because when we with the board game night. So for those who don't know, because you don't go to my college, every one day a week I do a board game night, and students, they're starting off people in their first year, but then they kind of just stay. We'll come in and we'll do board games, and we do more complex board games for the most part.
Yeah, a lot of Euro games, but recently we've done some more American ones that are in the Euro style.
And I know, and of course it's tricky because it's unclear how many people will be at board game night at any given night. And so I have this since I've been here at the school that I teach at, which has been like 10 years, my board game collection has expanded immensely. And I'm always like, is there a game I can play with 8? What can I play with 8 or 9? And we have played Carcassonne, and I've got the big Carcassonne mega box just in the other room.
Yeah, you do.
And
then you gave us your old base version of Carcassonne.
I like Carcassonne. I think it's good.
It is good. I don't know if I like every expansion of it.
Oh, Advanced Civilization will play 8. Oh, that's nice. Thank you, Krellin. But it will also take 8 hours. We'll do like Elder Sign.
We've played games that took 8 hours. I remember when it was in the first couple of years of game night, there were a couple game nights that went until like 4 a.m.
That's true.
And that doesn't happen anymore. You're much better about calling it at midnight. But like it's a solid like 4 to 5 hours of gaming during the school year every week, which I think is just really great. It really like board games allow people to develop a sense of community without having that awkward like small talk of like, where do you go to school? And like everyone's like, okay, we all go to school at the same place. Like we all know we like board games. Let's just figure out this board game. And you can learn a lot about someone by just like watching how they play a game. So I really enjoy it.
So here's something I think is interesting, that what kinds of also we have these sort of tensions is that there are a lot of games, and there's like I don't know, maybe 2 different types of people who come to game night. There are probably more than 2, but let's just say 2 for now. Right? The ones who are a bit more casual. Mm-hmm. Although, let's be upfront, nobody who comes to game night is super, super casual.
Yeah, because they're willing to play games for 5 hours straight.
Yeah, so nobody's super, super casual, but there are people who are sort of on the more casual end, and then there are people who are really into really complicated games or more complicated games.
Well, there were some people at the beginning of this past year who were really only into party games. Mm-hmm. And they all sort of dropped off as we started playing different games.
Yeah.
Like, they really only wanted to play Secret Hitler.
That's true. They did. They were like, "Where's Secret Hitler? We love the Secret Hitler." Which was still, it's still good because Secret Hitler plays 10. So that's, right, useful.
Yeah, except there were 20 people.
And you're like, awkward. But what I was thinking about the ways in which the different games sort of bring out different elements in people, right? I was thinking about, because we do co-op games, we do competitive games, we do games where there's a lot of strategy, we do games where there's a lot of puzzle solving or none at all, some where there's chance, some where there's less chance, where there's a lot of coordination, some with like hidden traitor mechanics. And like, how does a whole group, how do they learn a game when only one person knows it, when nobody knows it? How do they sort of share that information? How do they work together to sort of create Critwitch, we our game nights when we started this year, we had like 20 people, and we'd have to do like 2 groups
or like 3 groups
or 3 groups.
And and also people would come at different times, and like we had to you had to be super flexible about what games you brought.
Yeah, I was like, okay, well, if we have, the break point is always 5. Right? If you have 4 or less, there are a whole bunch of games you can play. Like, a whole bunch of games. Ooh, we never did a Catan tournament type play. Oh, that could be interesting.
We've actually never played Catan at game night.
I have it, but we've never played it. Right? Like, this is crazy. I think it's because if we're going to play a German-style board game, I probably would go with Carcassonne over Catan.
Yeah, and also because you really like playing new games that you just got or haven't played before, or like campaign style games. I
don't mind playing, although we'll do repeats. I don't mind that at all, right? But I want people to have like some variety, right?
Yeah.
So Rissa asks, what is your current favorite game?
My current favorite game is the Arkham Horror LCG.
Can you talk about that?
I play it all the time. So it's...
Wait. Let me give the intro before you talk about it. So this is a thing that I was really excited, and I don't know how much Dahlia can talk about, but I feel like you can talk about some things. So I want to meet your friends in the mountains, Krell, and you do everything you describe it sounds exciting. I, as people know, right, I play the Game of Thrones card game. And I was playing that before I was doing game nights, I think. And we'll see.
I think you started around the same time game night started.
I think that's probably true.
You would mention like, oh, I'm going to this game store.
Yeah.
To play the Game of Thrones card game with new people.
Yeah.
And then eventually they became with your Game of Thrones.
I first started by going to a tournament in Connecticut where I knew nobody, and I'd never played the game with another person. And I was just like, I like Game of Thrones. I'm going to play this card game. Let's just go. And then I found myself in there. I think I might have started playing Game of Thrones first, but right around the same time.
Krellin says their friends in the mountains have a 100-square-foot closet full of games with 500 to 600 games in there.
Oh, that sounds amazing. That sounds amazing. But I was playing Game of Thrones, which is by Fantasy Flight Games, and Fantasy Flight, I had played Vampire: The Eternal Struggle, that card game way back in the day. That was my collectible card game. I didn't play Magic. I played Vampire. And then I wasn't playing, and I played a couple card games around the same time, like Mythos and a couple of things. but then I didn't play card games for years. And then Game of Thrones came out, and I was like, oh, let me play that. And Fantasy Flight, their model is not the random model of Magic where you get a pack and you don't know what's in it. Like, you get a pack and you know exactly what's in it, and they give you 3 copies of each card. And so then you basically get the packs you want, and you make the decks you want, and nobody can, like, basically outspend someone in that way. Like, no one can just, like, buy 14 boxes to maybe get the special rares or spend... Falcom, they're still playing. Falcom, it's such a good game. So I started playing that, and then they had all these other... They've made a lot of other card games since then. And one of them was Arkham Horror. And I was like, let's play Arkham Horror. And so I introduced some of the game night crew. There's like a slightly smaller subset of our game night crew that might play during the summer that will play maybe something a bit more long-term with more consistency, like Pathfinder or Arkham Horror. But so then I got to introduce it, and we all got to sort of learn how to play it. And now go on, tell the story.
Okay, so it's in the same well, it's not the same creators as Cthulhu Confidential, but it's based on the same Lovecraftian mythos. It's a card game version of investigators trying to defeat elder gods. And you have a mythos deck, which is basically the encounter cards that are trying to beat you. You have an act and agenda deck, or act and agenda cards, which are your goal and the monster's goal. And if the monsters reach their goal before you reach your goal, you lose.
It's bad.
It's really bad.
Well, you do have dynamite. So there is dynamite in the game, but I don't think we've yet met Cthulhu, right?
We have not. It starts with Mordhoth, and then the Dunwich Legacy is Yog Sothoth, and then the Path to Carcosa is Hester, and then the Forgotten Age is Yig, and then the Circle Undone is Azathoth.
By the way, for those of you in chat, also, all you in chat, tell us what your favorite board games are as well. And if you've not played Arkham Horror, it's really good. It's a cooperative game. It's got some deck building. It's really fun. Oh, Riss is on Carcosa right now. Oh, Carcosa's good.
Carcosa is, to this day, people are like, Carcosa was my favorite. So, like, even though multiple cycles have come out since then, people still really love Carcosa. But make sure, anyone in chat who's going to check it out, make sure it's the card game, not the board game.
Yes.
Because the board game, apparently the designer for the board game left FFG, which is why there haven't been any expansions for it.
Oh, that's interesting. Krellin, I also really love Pathfinder, and I've played, Dolly and I actually we have a small group that have been playing it together. We're still in Skulls and Shackles at the moment.
Yes. Right?
Hopefully we'll be able to play again sometime in July, August.
Hopefully. I mean, we have the people. We just don't have the time.
We will find it. Yeah. No, I love Pathfinder. Is if people have not played the Pathfinder adventure card game, there's a new edition out, and Dahlia has it. I've not played it yet, but I want to. But it's so the game has such an elegant sort of system that everyone makes a deck of 15 cards.
15 cards, and your deck is also your health. And your deck is your health.
And when you draw cards, right? And so fighters, so elegant, right? Fighters have a hand size of 4. So they don't go through their deck as fast, but they don't have as many cards. But like a wizard has like a deck size of 6 or 7, a hand size. So, somebody's watching me, and I have no privacy. Whoa, I always feel that somebody's watching me. Tell me, is it just a dream? Luffy, thank you for the follow. Welcome into the Foxhole. Hang out with us. Yeah, the new edition is already out, right? It's already out. And it is and so like there's this, it's amazing thing where when you go through your cards, you get the cards, which is great, but that depletes your health. And when you run out of cards, you're dead. And healing is about taking things from your discard pile and putting them back in your deck. So it's really elegant. It's very cool.
Oh, Rissa says Pandemic Legacy and Pandemic Cthulhu are really fun. We've played Pandemic Legacy. It was really good.
It was really
and
good.
I want to play season 2, but we don't have the group for it.
Yeah, I want to play season 2 so badly. And this is actually, so here's the thing I think is interesting, which is sort of related to RPGs in a way, or perhaps not, we can think about it, is that when I think about RPGs, what makes an RPG group is often that you'll have a group of people who commit to meet regularly to sort of go through something together, like, weekly, or with Rissa and I, we meet monthly. And what's interesting is that now we're having this renaissance of board game culture, right?
Mm-hmm.
Since Catan, right? Now more people are playing board games, adults are playing board games, there are like board game cafes, and now we have these sort of campaigns like Arkham, like Pathfinder, like Pandemic Legacy, all the legacy games, where people want to commit Gloomhaven, right? Commit to meeting each other weekly and having a long form story with each other.
Mm-hmm. I also have Gloomhaven, and you have it too, but you haven't played it.
The digital version of Gloomhaven came out today.
Did it really? Okay.
Apparently it's what do you call it? Early access, so it's not,
okay.
Apparently it's still buggy. Yes, and he requested campaigns as well. Ice Bunny says, for me, it depends on who I'm playing with. When I played with my special needs kids, Opsgarden was a favorite, and with my brother, I love Catan or Monopoly. Oh, I really want to play Risk Legacy. I heard it was really good. I heard that Risk Legacy was really, really good. And I do want to try Pandemic Cthulhu. That seems fun. Atomica, House on Haunted Hill. That's the one you're talking about. Yeah.
I think it's actually Betrayal at House on the Hill.
Yes, Betrayal.
Or are they two different games?
No. That's the Betrayal.
At House on the Hill or something.
There's House and there's also Hill. There may be Haunted, I don't know, but also Betrayal. Like there are words.
Yeah, exactly. But that was also a legacy game.
Yes.
I mean, there is a legacy version of it, and we need to play that as well.
Betrayal at the House on Haunted Hill. That's the one.
Okay. Yes.
All the words are in there. Oh my goodness. So I want you to talk a little bit more about your journey with Arkham Horror.
Okay, so this goes back to like 2013 or something, but I did the whole like conventions and like going to conventions and like meeting people and stuff. I did that, but that was like 2013 to 2016. Like I don't do it anymore. I really only go to Gen Con now.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my friends was like, I don't understand how you do it, but every convention you go to, you manage to meet someone really important. And it was kind of true. Like I went to Anime Expo, I met like the senior marketing director of Axis Games or something.
You've got mad networking skills.
Well, because he was standing at the front of the line and we were waiting to get our thing signed, and I was like talking to him about how much I love this game, and he was like, you should post on the forums, and I was like, okay, and then he gave me his card. And like I've met streamers and stuff, and of course none of them would remember me. Like it's like 3, 4, 5 years later now. But at Gen Con last year, I met the lead designer for Arkham Horror. And well, actually you met him first.
I did.
You were talking to him first. But I recognized him because I was like, I'm a little bit obsessed with you. Because I love your game and I think you're brilliant. But we got talking, and I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, but it's probably fine because the cycle is about to come out. But he offered me and my friend and my play group to become playtesters for Arkham Horror. And that's how obsessed I am with the game, that we play both the cycles as they come out, and we also do the play testing. So but it started because of you, because you introduced me to the game, and I was like, I really love this game and I want to play it again and again and again. And it has high replayability if you play with different investigators, but it also has high replayability because they keep coming out with new cycles. And so you're not playing the exact same scenario over and over again. And so the amount of metagaming that can happen goes down.
Oh, Kalan, are you going? Good night, Kalan. Good night. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit, no details, no NDA breaking details, but I was wondering if you could talk about the process of being a playtester.
So we get alpha and beta cards. Well, we get alpha cards. The beta testers get the beta cards. And we get the scenario mechanics, but we don't actually get any of the story. It was really interesting to see the design process, to be like, oh, this happens before this happens, or this gets implemented based on a description that gets given to the artist or something like that. And so we get the materials to test the mechanics of a scenario, but we don't get to see the final thing until, because I think the beta testing is primarily internal. For this game in particular, I don't know how it works for other games, but we get to see the original ideas, which I think is super cool. And then we get to be like, we gave input that actually affected how this mechanic works, or how this works, or we thought this was too powerful, so they nerfed it, and now it's underpowered, and everyone's going to be really sad. But and then sometimes you're like, I don't know why they nerfed that thing, because it was fine, and now it's just really underpowered, and no one's going to play it. But because it's cooperative, I think they have more space to design underpowered cards, because no one's going to be like, why did I buy this pack? This is a shitty card.
And I'm going to lose the tournament, right?
Right. Because it's cooperative. So you're like, maybe this card has a cool design space around it, or maybe I just want to play with an interesting deck idea. And they have more space for underpowered cards, because you're most of the time you're building from one set of cards, and so not everyone can have every single card that they want. And so sometimes you're like, I'll take this less powerful card so that you can have this more powerful card. Levi says, bring all complaints about the expansions to me.
Yes, you personally. Is it ever stuff like walk up and down this ladder and tell us how the animation looks, or is this just board testing? Right? I mean,
well, it's a board game, or it's a card game, so there isn't animation.
Yeah. So tell me something. Doing playtesting and being sort of like, you have like so still packing my brain to video game testing. No, board game testing. Since you've been your knowledge of the card pool is very good, and you have a really good sense of it. Do you want to, are you interested in designing yourself? Are you what are you getting out of this process that might go somewhere? How does it affect how you think about board games?
Well, so there's an element of it where I'm just enjoying the ride. I'm like, it's really cool that I get to do this thing, and I'm not really looking for it to turn into anything more. But if it does, that would be awesome. And Asmodee does a summer internship, and so I'm looking into doing that next year. But of course, applications have not gone live yet, so I don't actually know what it would involve. But it's right now it's the game I'm most obsessed with, which I think by default makes it my favorite.
Right.
But I have a ton of other games that I like, mostly that I've played through you. Like Steampunk Rally is super good.
That's a good
Like,
game, and you can play with like what, 8?
yeah, it goes up to 8. Yeah.
That's a fun one because it's simple, so you can bring in kind of newer people, but it still has enough in it that you can do something with it.
And I'd be super interested to see if they would do an expansion for that could go up to more people.
Yeah, that would be, and like also maybe like a bigger track maybe would be kind of cool.
Because the track is only 6 pieces, and 2 of them are the end pieces. So
really only 4.
Yeah, really only 4.
We just played, and I think if in case people want to, okay, so we just played a game last game night, which was Monday. Yes. We played Time Stories.
Time Stories.
And it is half off on Amazon, I saw. So it's like like you might be able to get it like Miniature Market half off, like, so that'd be like $25. I think it's normally $50. It does not have replayability, right? You play it once, but once is probably like you play it 3 or 4 times.
Yes, you do multiple runs, and you really have to do them all in a single night, because there's a ton of information you get from playing it once that helps influence how you play it moving forward. Do I also play TTRPGs? I do, but I'm very new to them. I only started playing like 2 years ago. And the group I play with doesn't meet consistently. It started out, we were meeting once a week, and then as more people joined, it became harder and harder to coordinate. So do you play Time Stories in a set order? No. Well, kind of. You start with the core, and then they tell you to move on to the next one. But I would imagine you could play them in any order.
Any order. There's just one, a brand new one that came out that they recommend that you've played other things first, because apparently it's very difficult, right? So they've got this newest one called Madame that is apparently really hard. But there are 8 stories, and so I would say that each story, each sort of expansion story is probably like $20. And you play each one maybe 3-4 times. So, you get like a good 8 hours of entertainment out of one. But once you finish an adventure, you probably are not going to play it again because you solved the puzzles.
Well, we played it 3 times.
Yeah.
The second time took like maybe 45 minutes.
Yeah.
The setup is super easy once you've set it up the first time.
Yeah.
So there's no like downtime in between of resetting the board. So I think we might have played for like maybe 4 hours. I don't think it was 8 hours.
No, I think we played for 4. That's right. That's about right. Because we started at 5, and I think we finished at... We probably started at 5 to 6. We finished at like around 10.
Yeah, we finished around 10.
Yeah.
And then we played Hand of Fate, and then that went until 1 in the morning. But
that was good.
Yeah. It was good.
So I want to ask you a couple questions about your TTRPGs. Which ones your RPGs? Which ones have you played?
I started with Eclipse Phase. This is sort of the GM's experimental group. So every so often he's like, let's play a new one. And you're like, we have not solved any of the arcs of this first one, but okay, let's make new characters. We started with Eclipse Phase. Right now we're playing Call of Cthulhu. We've played Warhammer Fantasy, not 40K.
Barontor loves Warhammer Fantasy.
Oh, yes, I remember that from his interview. Yes. It's really good. I actually really enjoyed it. I think I enjoyed it because I got to just kill stuff. Like, there was one time I rolled a critical and I did 19 damage to a dwarf, and I killed him in 1 hit.
What were you playing?
I was playing a mercenary, an elven mercenary, but I had the mercenary class is one of the few that starts with a skill that lets you do 2 attacks in 1 turn. So yeah, but I did a critical, and like my first hit for like maybe 3 damage, and then the second one was a critical that hit for 19 damage, and I just like outright killed him.
There is something very satisfying about lots of murder.
Yeah, especially if you're playing like a really like a character who only cares about fighting. There's something very satisfying about being like, I just killed that guy and I don't even care.
Barator, Dolly was telling us which RPG she's played, and her first one was a clip phase, which makes her very different from all the D&D starters. But then Call of Cthulhu, and then Warhammer Fantasy.
Yeah, well, not in that order. We did Warhammer Fantasy first because we're doing Call of Cthulhu now. And there was one more in between that Scum and Villainy.
Oh, that's right. That was your game that was where the party just shot all of the things and did.
Yes. And so I tried to make a stealthy character. We had a muscle. We had a pilot. We had me as a mystic who was also trying to be really stealthy. And we had something else. I don't remember. And basically, I would fail all my stealth rolls, and they would have to come in and save me. Well, that happened once. And after that, I was like, no more solo missions. If I do a scouting mission and things go south, I'm getting the hell out. Like, I don't care. I'm not fighting 6 things by myself when I only have a knife.
Barator wants to know which edition Warhammer Fantasy was it?
Not the most recent one, because I think it was 4. If that makes any sense. Because I think the most recent one that came out was 5. And then
probably
I don't know. We basically just get the rule books from the GM.
Yeah.
He like sends us the PDFs and we're like, all right, we'll read these, and then we don't read them, and then he tells us how to play.
And then of course you played Night Witches.
Mm-hmm.
With me.
I did. We didn't finish it.
We didn't finish it because it was hard to compartmentalize the 2 different ones.
Yes, because we ran into your game, and then it was very similar because a lot of the characters are super similar.
But then some were different, and then that was confusing to me. And I was like, yes. I can't. No, there's too much.
And also their decisions were different, which changed the story. So
I was like, I can't right now.
It was too much. Yeah.
But it was so helpful because I really wanted to get a sense of how things would play. I should probably stop running games just twice, but you know, it is what life is. So tell me about, since you're like relatively new to RPGs of the tabletop variety, what do you think about the experience?
So I find it super difficult for me to do a lot of heavy role play because I find it difficult to compartmentalize the difference between what I would do and what my character would do. Mm-hmm. Because on the one hand, you want to play a character who's similar to yourself because that's what you know. On the other hand, if they're too similar to yourself, then there's no difference between what they would do and what you would do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I
thought you did a good job of playing somebody different for Night Witches. I thought your character was quite different from you in some ways.
In some ways, but in other ways she was very similar. Like she was similar to sort of a past me. Like she was very quiet and like kind of like not shy, but like observant before she did anything. And now I just talk.
Hey, board gaming and gaming helps people blossom, right?
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Definitely.
I mean, I think there's a lot of positive.
Levi says that's why I always play an arrogant jerk. I can do that in my sleep.
Well, I wonder about which games, right? I was thinking about, so we were playing Time Stories, as we said, and Time Stories likes to think of itself as an RPG board game. Mm-hmm. As does Arkham Horror in its own way. And I think some of these games, like maybe Betrayal, maybe also Dead of Winter, some of them really want to sort of get more of an RPG feel in their board game.
Right.
And I think for the most part they fail. I think they give really good stories, and they're really interesting, and you're really excited about it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But I think for the most part they fail in getting an RPG feel because of the way the mechanics work.
I think it's partly the mechanics, and it's partly that it's a linear story progression.
Yeah.
So, like, Arkham Horror in particular reads like a novel.
Yeah.
Like, you could read through it, pick a random resolution every time, and you would just have a choose your own adventure novel.
Yeah.
Like, so there's not a huge amount of role playing that goes into it.
Mm-hmm.
There are choice moments where you can be like, what would I do versus what would my character do? But yeah, there is not a lot of heavy RP. Time stories, because you're sharing so much information, there's not a lot of room for RP because there's a lot of like, wait, let me see that card.
Yeah. Which you're not supposed to share unless you're in the
same location. You're
not
supposed to share, but also it's like, I would just write down this in our notes, and then we all see my notes.
I think one of the things that makes it difficult for board games to really get into an RPG space is that there are win conditions in board games and there are loss conditions in board games, whereas the way I was always told to play RPGs is that there's no winning or losing in an RPG. Right? You just tell a story, you explore it, and you find out what happens, but there's no winning or losing. Whereas in all those board games, there is winning and losing.
Right. Right.
You can win or you can lose. And I think that makes a difference, right? If you know that there's winning and losing, I think that if there becomes a choice between RPing it and doing the optimal thing, you're probably going to do the optimal thing because you want to win.
Right. But at the same time, it's like, if you really commit to RPing, I think you could do it.
I think that's true.
It's just that it's not conducive to the best outcome. Like, because there is a singular outcome that is best.
Jer says it kind of feels like a gamist RPG, to be honest, which is not what most people consider RPGs these days with the narrative movement. This is interesting because if there's one thing I don't like is when people say, well, that's not a real RPG. And I've heard people do that in all sorts of different directions, right? In the beginning, it was sort of more gamist people saying that the story games were not real RPGs. And now I'm hearing some story people saying, well, that's really just a war game. That's not really an RPG. And I was like, come on now, just let it all be. let all those things be in there. Yeah, so, well, you can have death and despair, but that's not the same thing as losing. Like, I don't think that death and despair could be winning, depending on if you enjoy that, right? Whereas, and then you can keep going, right? You can make a new character. You can have lots of despair for a while and be really sad. Krellin says, even RPG board games like Hero Quest or Descent aren't really that much like a gamist RPG because your options are so limited. Yeah, and I was thinking about Descent, which we've also played, which I really, really like, but it is quite different. Like, I'm trying to think about how would I compare Descent to like a really, really gamist dungeon crawl Dungeons and Dragons game, and it still feels different to me because one, you actually, I mean, even though D&D is class and level based and all of that, you still make your character yourself. Right? It's like your own character that you've made, and that feels different. And Descent is a lot more antagonistic than even the most antagonistic D&D has ever been to me. Yes. Leap. So yeah, I think there's something interesting about I don't know. I think there's something about the game boardiness that makes it different from an RPG.
Yeah, and also Descent in particular, you don't have a GM who's controlling the story.
Yeah.
You just have an overlord
Yeah.
who is the antagonist.
That's right.
And the overlord's only job is to be an antagonist and like hinder the heroes as
Yeah.
much as possible. And the story is pushed forward by the narrative in the book.
That's right. That's right. And so then there you can't change the narrative, right?
Right.
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 And this is interesting because I think that in RPGs, failures are not necessarily losses, right? Like I do not equate failure with loss in an RPG because you failed to get in the door. Okay. And now there's a new thing, right? And that's a new situation. Whereas you could just lose, right? In the board game, you're like, you lost. So you have to reset and like try it again.
But also, Arkham Horror is pretty good about trying to teach people that failure isn't a loss, because they tell you basically under almost every circumstance, there's some kind of resolution, and then they say move on to the next scenario. Like, you might have a harder time in the next scenario, you might have an easier time in the next scenario, but either way you move on. And Descent sort of does that, in that it favors people with experience points.
Yeah, I do think, and yes, you could call it role play versus role play. This is true before GNS. Although, here's the thing, though. I think you could do a narrativist game in a super ROLL play kind of way. I think that is totally doable. Like, I think that you could take a super narrativist game and like I think you could do Night Witches all roll ROLL and less roll ROLE. Right, I think
you absolutely could.
Like, I think you and that is a very narrativist game, but I think that you could do it in a very RP light way and very rolling dice heavy kind of a way. So I think that's kind of tricky, right? Because I think that they often align but don't necessarily align. But
I think you're right, because when you introduce a game board and you introduce pieces that are moving, a lot of it becomes discussion about what is the optimal strategy to do what we want to do right now. And like, you often see that even in like Critical Role, when they're in a dungeon, there's limited role play.
Yeah, that's right.
There's a lot of like, okay, so in the most, in the King's, in episode 69, there was Ford's choice to go back in after Thunder stepping out, which was an in-character thing to do.
Yeah.
But a lot of the time, it's like, okay, there's a monster, let's defeat it.
Yeah.
Like, and how do we defeat it? And there's like limit, and like those are like professional voice actors who've done this for years, however long they've been doing it. And when you introduce a board, it becomes like, what do I do to win this scenario?
Although interesting, Krellin had said something during that episode 69, and he said the thing that was interesting, and he said that he thought that they could have defeated the Giggle Fist, but that they ran because that they were overestimating the difficulty of the challenge. And what I think is interesting is that I think that there are moments, especially since Molly died, that sometimes I think there's a moment where their sort of RP-ness takes over, that they think, oh, this is too hard for us. They don't necessarily run through the challenge rating. And they run, right? They're like, oh, nope, this is like, we got to go. And I thought that was interesting. But also, I also think it's interesting how people get mad when they don't know what something is as players. Their characters are more scared, it seems like, Levi says. And I think that's true. Is that the board that does that, or the initiative trap that changed? This is interesting. I was thinking about how people were frustrated with Sam, because Sam will often make choices that are not optimal choices, but are RP choices. Like, there was a fight decades ago, like tens of episodes ago, where This was early on when they had to go swim through water to get to this other space.
Right.
And there was a battle there, and Sam just didn't go. Like, he's like, my character would not swim through that water because my character's afraid of water. And they were having this the battle was going poorly. It was going poorly, and he was not going. And they're like, I know the other players were like, this battle was created with the assumption that all of us would be here, and you are not here right now. But he didn't do it, right? Because it was like, that was that RP choice for him. So it's interesting to see, right, when RP comes out in how it interacts. Krellin says, I firmly believe Mercer's a gamist and would never set them up against a combat encounter that is completely outside of their ability. He might give them a deadly encounter, quote unquote, but he'd never send a CR-16 dragon against level 1s, which is the thing that happens in the module I'm playing on stream right now. Oh, wow. Okay. Fluffernutter, I actually think that's true, Krellin. I agree with you. I think that he might give them challenges that are like 10% too hard for them sometimes, to try to maybe encourage them to run, to learn that sometimes you have to go. But I do agree with you that I don't think he ever really goes too far out of their challenge rating. I think that he tends to balance it for what their party is.
And also, if you listen to the Talks Machina, there's always people who are like, did you intend this to be as hard as it was? Did you do this with the intent that they would fail? And his answer is almost always no.
That is correct, yeah.
Like, his answer is almost always they could have done it, but it took some luck, and they didn't have the luck on their side.
Yeah. And so, like, I think that he does expect that sometimes they need to run, but that's if it goes poorly. But I think that I think that Krellin is correct, that he really is trying to think about having a good balanced, right, maybe a little bit more difficult, maybe a little bit lighter, but within this particular kind of space. So Levi says, you're not supposed to fight the dragon, Rissa. We're supposed to run. We parlayed. Levi says, we might have made the Giggle Demon extra hard because he needed something to happen with Yasha, and as a gamist, he wouldn't want to fudge health and such. Yeah, and I think that's actually also true. Yeah. Atomica says, I have no problem sending a big bad after players, but I will be clear with it. You aren't going to kill this. You have to get away. And I think this is interesting because how do you manage, right, the RP? And actually, when it comes to combat versus RP, there's like debates on Twitter, and it's interesting. People always say that if your RP stops when combat happens, you're doing it wrong. And I feel like that really depends on the system. Like, there are systems that do not give you a lot of opportunity to RP through your combat, and some that do.
Yeah, and there's also GMs that design a combat with you playing optimally in mind. There are power gamers that there's all different types of gamers, and like how you approach a combat system is different for everybody.
And it's interesting.
I tend to stop RPing out of combat because I find it very difficult to keep all that information in my head at once. I'm like, especially because we play online. Yeah. So I'm like, I don't know where these people are. Like, I don't have a board to see where everything is. So I'm like, okay, I think this guy is 20 feet away from me. Is he in range? Can I shoot him? Or do I have to run up and swipe at him? There's a lot of choices. And also you're like, okay, he's engaged with 2 people. So if I go and help him, especially in Warhammer Fantasy, there's advantage and disadvantage based on how many people you're engaged with. Yeah. And so there's a lot of okay, do I go over and help them? Not would my character go over and help them?
Jer tends to create the encounters in a gamist way, at least the ones that he gives to the players. The players may just pick some things that are way out of their league, and there you go. Krellin says RP during combat.
We did that once in a game of Numenera, where
and you've also played Numenera, new ones.
I played it once. I was a gravity wizard, and my friend was an ice wizard, or water, or whatever the class was, and we were we got attacked by a giant centipede monster thing, and we were like, we're gonna fight it. We were level 1.
Oh.
And our GM was like, you really should run from this. And we were like, no, we will be fine. We're gonna stand here floating a foot above the ground, covered in ice, and fight this thing. And he was like, okay, GM intervention, you run. Like,
see, I wouldn't. I would not do that GM intervention. I'd be like, okay, just so you know, this is, and then you might die.
Yeah,
that would be.
Yeah. We absolutely would have died, but we really wanted to fight the thing, and yeah, he did not let us.
Oh no, I mean, I will let people move to their doom. Krellin says, I think RPing during combat is a skill you acquire and improve over time, and I think that's true. But I also feel like system really matters quite a lot in how. So, for example, one of the things I like about GURPS is that I feel like I can role play through combat. Like I can, because there are ways in which I can manifest my character's personality through combat. Like I could make a character who's always making aggressive attacks, or I could make a character who's always making sort of defensive attacks. Like I can actually, there are tactical choices that express sort of how my character might be. Whereas I do not find that in a lot of other games. Krellin says, I think system mastery is an important part of RPing during combat. Oh, I think that's also true. If you really know the system, then you can play with it a bit more.
Rissa says 16-year-old dudes don't know the meaning of parlay.
Anarch Dovey says, when it comes to difficulties of challenges, etc., my opinion changes when it comes to systems like D&D. I want it to be beatable. If it's something like Vampire, I throw fairness and all that crap out the window. Yeah, I do think there's actually quite a lot of system that really kind of changes. Yeah, and Krellin points out that when you have system mastery, the decision space in combat is easier to juggle. And I think that's true, right? I think that once you really know that system really well, you can do more things with it that are... although it's interesting, because with Cthulhu Confidential, all combat is done with one roll, right? Like
that's true, yeah.
It's just done with one roll with Cthulhu Confidential, and then you get to narrate how that combat works out. Like I say, okay, you got a full success, so tell me how you beat this person up. Or you got a partial success, so tell me how, you know, like the outcome is this. You tell me how this works out in an RP way.
I think Night Witches was super interesting with not combat, but like the mission rolls. Yeah. Because it was only one roll by the lead pilot or lead navigator. But then if they failed, the other person, like anyone else, could choose to be like, well, I'm gonna try to push like on our own.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Atomica. Thank you for being here. Atomica, thanks as well.
Yeah, so I think Night Witches was super interesting. I really enjoyed playing Night Witches. It was like, it was just a completely different experience from anything I had played before.
I also think interesting that their combat, right, which is these missions, have RP outcomes, right? Like you don't, like you might take harm, or maybe one of your loved one dies, or like there's a way in which like they actually have sort of RP outcomes in the baked into the system, and I'm interested in seeing, like I'm interested in running Fate, which also seems to try to work in this mode. I don't know how. I want to see how it works, right? In D&D, you don't really role-playing combat, says Anarch W, because it is so slow, there is no time for that, and it extends the game. Combat in D&D is so slow, extending it further becomes boring.
That's interesting. Yeah, because in Night Witches, you're RPing the whole time.
That's right. Yeah.
And, like, there's a lot of okay, how do you do it?
Yeah.
Like,
hello, Mr. Awful McPerson. Your brain hates Fate. You know, I am very. I'm going to try to put together some tests of Fate because I want to see how it goes. But everyone really talks about how Fate is so different than everything else, and I just don't believe it. I mean, they say so, but I don't believe it yet. You know what I mean? Like, I want to test that out on my brain. And Rissa loved the fact that Cthulhu Confidential combat just did not take forever. Reach out to get bennies or try to. Still need to figure out how to adapt. Oh yeah, the reach out. She wants Rissa, our GM, our Call of Cthulhu GM, has done a lot of has modified Call of Cthulhu. We're still playing 5th edition. Fifth. Like for example, we can get we get poker chips for good RP and for various things. We can use those poker chips to manipulate the dice because sometimes D100 can be a little bit brutal, and so things like we can flip the die roll, we can roll twice, and that's really great. And so she's really sort of interested in how to get that reach out maneuver to sort of work in Call of Cthulhu, which will be really interesting. Yeah. Wushu is a bear rule system my brain enjoys. How does it work? I want to know how that works.
I've never heard of that.
I've heard of it, but I don't know it. Yeah. So Levi says my insult comic bard's RP was just zingers in combat to go along with vicious mockery and telling people things were fine when they were clearly not fine. Yeah, I think. Yeah, I'm fascinated by, and it's funny because in board games this is not at all how it's happening. Like all the discussion we're having right now, and Anarctively loves Fate. All of the kind of discussion we're having now is not something that is actually particularly relevant when you're doing a board game. Although, here's my although. I have an although. You were RPing a bunch in Descent. In a way. When you were playing the treasure hunter and we were in a fight, well, I was the overlord, so I was like, that's cool. Like you were like, I could go help my friends, but my character's a treasure hunter and I'm gonna get the treasure. And so there were these interesting moments where there were perhaps some suboptimal choices. I don't know if that's even true, right? Being made because your character was a treasure hunter and you're like, I'm gonna get the treasure.
Yeah.
And your friends
but that was also me as a person being like, I love getting the stuff. Like, even if we lose, we got the stuff. Like, I mean, I've played a lot of games where I'm like, is there a character who just amasses money or resources and then spends them all to do stuff? I want to be that character.
That is true. So I think it's interesting. And how do you feel about the RPGs? Oh, and you're gonna be playing a bunch of RPGs at Gen Con, yes?
I'm gonna be playing a couple. I'm playing Bluebeard's Bride.
Nice.
I'm actually playing in one of your Clockwork Dominion sessions.
Yes.
I think those are the two major ones. I don't think I'm doing any others. I'm doing a bunch of stuff, but not a lot of RPGs.
For the first time since I've been going to Gen Con, I'm not doing the Game of Thrones tournament.
Because they put it on the wrong day. And
I was like, what is that? Come on, people. Now you're doing Arkham Horror and Pathfinder. What else are you doing?
There's like a thread spinning class that we're doing where you learn to spin thread out of wool.
Oh.
You learn to use a drop spindle.
Oh, that's cool.
That's at like 8 a.m. on Saturday. But like we're gonna do it. I'm playing a bunch of different games. I don't know. The big things my life centers around is Arkham Horror, Pathfinder, and spending Thursday morning just in the dealer's room or expo hall or whatever it's called.
By the way, Krellin asks a question for you. Is there a board game, board game or RPG that you haven't got to play that you really want to play?
Well, okay, so I just got Mage Knight, and I want to try that. But I wouldn't say, like, oh, I really desperately want to play it, because I don't know how much I like it. I feel like as a board gamer, I'm just so open to like playing whatever comes my way and seeing if I like it, that I'm like, of course there are things I want to play. I want to play everything.
Yeah.
And like whenever someone's like, what games do you like? I'm like, I like them all. Like there are very few, we've talked about this,
Yeah.
but there are very few games that I found that I don't like in some capacity.
Okay. Let me then flip Krellin's question. Which board games are you less excited about that you've played where you're like, I don't think that was as successful? And maybe it's because it wasn't fitting your personality or because you didn't think the game itself did what it tries to do very well.
Right. So, well, you mentioned, which I had completely forgotten about, you mentioned the Sherlock Holmes game, which I really didn't like. And I don't know if I would like it more now that I have more experience with RPGs. But I didn't like it because it felt like one of those old games that was like, you're in a room, what do you do?
Yeah.
And you have to type in like, I open the door, and they're like, there is no door, and you're like, well, that's not helpful. Like there should be a response beyond you can't, it's not in the book. And
open the door, I don't understand that.
Yeah.
Turn handle, you turn the handle.
Yeah.
Walk out room, I don't understand that.
Yeah. Walk forward, you walk 2 feet. Like it was just like not, it was not my kind of game, because it was like this person's been murdered, what do you do? And I was like, I don't know. I got a lot of analysis paralysis with it. But at the same time, I can play some really complicated games and not get paralyzed by analysis.
That's true. This is the it's not the one-on-one Sherlock Holmes, Jer. This is Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective. I think it's really great. It's a box with 10 missions, and you're just given a mission brief. Like you're like, okay, this person was found in the park, mauled by an animal, and they were holding a blue crystal, and all that we know about them is that they worked at the carnival. And then what you do is you look through these newspapers and you look through the directory, and you decide where you want to go to investigate. And each turn you take, you have to note how many turns you take. And your goal is to try to solve the mystery. And the thing is, you don't actually know what questions they're going to ask you. They're going to be 8 questions at the end when you've decided you're done. 4 main questions and then 4 side questions. And yeah, it's like minute mysteries. Yeah, that's right, Falcon. And even though you don't know what questions they're going to ask, you know they're going to ask you who did it, how they did it, and why they did it. Those 3 they're going to ask. And then something else, and then 4 other ones. And you have to decide, you decide when you're done investigating, right? Like you decide when you think you've gotten enough information. And the more turns you take...
But there's also a lot of dead ends.
Right, because that might not be a good space to go. And it could also be solo. That is true. It could also be solo. But you can play with up to 8, I think. I don't actually think there's a limit to number of people. Each person just takes a turn and decides where they want to go. And you have to decide, like, where do you want to go? How long do you want to investigate? When do you think you've got enough information? And then when you've got enough information, you stop. And then you look to see what the questions are. And then you get points for each one you answer correctly.
But also, there's a discussion going on about Sleeping Beauty.
Oh, yes.
And whether or not she fell asleep to a drop spindle. And the answer is no, she fell asleep to a spinning wheel.
That's right.
Because that has a needle on it. And I'm thinking, like, in Rumpelstiltskin, when she spun straw into gold, was she using a wheel or a drop spindle?
Oh, that's a good question. Also, there's a Cthulhu version of that. I want to find the Cthulhu version of the one-on-one Sherlock Holmes, because that sounds very exciting. I want to find it.
Well, you just want to play all the Cthulhu games.
Not all of the Cthulhu games.
A lot of them.
Okay, a lot of them, but not all of them.
Well, which ones don't you want to play?
Okay, now you're asking me hard questions. Did you do it as good and as fast as Sherlock's? And like the answer is almost always no. Sherlock, you know.
Because Sherlock Holmes did it in a minimum number of steps.
Right, and also he cheats.
Yes, that's also true.
I have not played Cthulhu Saves the World. Is it good? What is it about? What happens in it? I don't know. You know, I will say, so it's a I find it to be a really interesting. I find it's like a really interesting puzzle. What I think I like about it is that there's quite a bit of puzzle to that one, and you really have to work it out yourself, right? Time Stories gives you more guidance. Oh, it's an RPG Maker. Cthulhu. Oh. Huh. Can you put a link? Put a link in there. Ooh.
Barentor asks if there's any type of game I haven't tried or would like to try more of, like tabletop war games.
Mm-hmm. You've done a diverse style, right?
Yeah, I really have. I really like card games. I like deck builders.
Mm-hmm.
I like Ascension. I like Hand of Fate,
Mm-hmm.
which we just played. I think certain ones do it better than others, but I like deck builders. I also like.
Thank you, Krellin.
I also like deck builders that where you bring a deck to the game as opposed to building it as part of the game mechanics. But that's not really something I want to play more of because I play so much of them.
Yeah. Although I imagine you might want to play, I don't know, like more Doomtown, Vampire, Game of Thrones, like kind of the more competitive ones.
Yes.
Ashes.
Yes. I really like Descent. I want to play more Descent. I like cooperative games, but I'm good at competitive games, and so that being good enough at them helps mitigate some of the inherent like dislike, because like so when I grew up, I was always like, oh, I'm bad at this, I don't like it, let me stop doing it. And I was lucky that I was good enough at school that I didn't completely give up on it, because otherwise I would have been like, can I drop out of school after high school? Like I'm done. Yeah. But I'm good enough competitively. I get very competitive and so I don't always like competitive games because I find I get too competitive. And like I get really, like, sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes I get really mad when I lose. And then I'm like, not in a you cheated kind of way, just in a I could have played that better kind of way.
Well, I think that's different, right? Like for me, it's not about competitive or cooperative. Like if I don't think that I am playing to my best, then I might get frustrated, right? Because like even in a cooperative game, like if you know when you're like, oh man, that was a misplay and I shouldn't have done that, right? Like I want to, although if I feel like I've learned something, then I'll be okay with it. Like if I make dumb mistakes that oh, thank you, Jer. If I make dumb mistakes that I should know better, then I get frustrated, right? Like if I make a mistake because I didn't realize there was a cool interaction, that's fine. But I don't want to make the same mistake twice. That makes me frustrated.
Do you think your early love of Pokemon type games influences your love of deck builders? That is a very interesting question that I have not thought about. When I was younger, it's not that I liked Pokemon games so much as that's what was available to me, because my parents would not let me play games, like video games. Well, my mom wouldn't let me. And so it was limited to what I could borrow from my friends. But I did like it. But I liked the grinding. I liked the completionist nature of it. And then as soon as I realized you couldn't actually complete it solo with one copy of the game, I was like, I was sort of soured on them. I still play them sometimes, but like, I got once my dad started letting me play games, I got really into JRPGs. Um,
Which
uh,
ones were your games?
what?
Which ones were your games?
Um, well, there was Legend of Zelda at the beginning. More recently, there's been like Bravely Default. I also really like farming simulator games. So I like Stardew Valley, I like Rune Factory, I like Harvest Moon. But back to Barantor's question, I think I just really like. I think it might have influenced me. I think there's like an element of similarity between like building a team of 6 with different move sets and then figuring out how do these moves combine to be the most effective. And that feeds into deck building where you're like, how do I combine these cards to be most effective? So I think that's a really interesting question. Yeah.
Anarch Dovey, I'd use GURPS. Between GURPS Basic Role Playing and Chronicles of Darkness Storyteller System for XCOM, I'd totally use GURPS because it gives me the crunch that I would want for that one. Like, and also it's a little bit deadly, and that's what I would want. That's what I would do. I would totally use GURPS for an XCOM game. I'm just saying that is what I would do. Not even. But the answer is, well, the answer is not always. I do not always choose GURPS for things. I was running a really quick sort of four session one shot, and I used Warp for that. Like, so I think different things I would use. And like, I'm thinking about using Fate for this French Resistance game rather than GURPS because of certain things that they have going on. So like, Delta Force might work for XCOM. Yeah. Trooper, what would you use to do insert things? Is it GURPS? Sometimes it's not GURPS, Krellin. Sometimes it's not GURPS. I played.
Sometimes it's Fate.
Sometimes,
like sometimes,
there was a JRPG that I played on the Xbox that I really loved, and I cannot remember the name. It was the original Xbox, I think, and it reminds me of Descent, actually, and it's one of the reasons. And Krellin says he wants to play more Descent, but his group doesn't like cooperative games. Interesting. And it was a JRPG where when you got into battles, it was on the chessboard. You know what I mean? And like each player could move a certain number of squares in a certain order, and then like their attacks had certain distances and certain like. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, this attack goes forward 2 squares and to the left and right 1 square. This attack only goes forward 4 squares. This one is really powerful, but like, and I really loved trying to figure out where to place each person in order to do the battle best. Like, that was a really, really like detail-oriented battle system that I loved. It was really good. It wasn't Final Fantasy Tactics because it was on the Xbox and Final Fantasy Tactics hadn't come out for it, but it was something like I'm trying to look at the box in my mind. It was everybody had weird clothing because it was a JRPG. No, it was this JRPG. It was like something, like adjective noun. I wish I could remember, but it was really cool. And Shining Force, but like, and all the rest of it was like we're like students in a magic academy, and like we're running around, and oh no, there's a threat. What are we gonna do? And Battle Zone. And I really enjoyed that. And it kind of reminds me a little bit of Descent, right? Where
what is the game that we have had the most fun playing?
Oh. Barantor, you've asked a difficult question because I think Dahlia's answer would be different from somebody else's answer.
I don't know what my answer is. Because, okay, so the one that spawned the most, future enjoyment for me was obviously Arkham Horror. But then we've played so many games. I don't even remember them all.
Yeah.
Some that have one that created some really great memories, Illuminati.
Oh, Illuminati's great. Oh,
Yeah.
That's a great game. And I want to play more of it. I still have this really soft spot in my heart for, like, I love these really big, sprawling, difficult games, but I also really love some of these really small, difficult games. Like, I really love The Grizzled and The Game.
Yeah.
Those are short and they're really hard. And I love, like, and we lose quite often, and I love that about them. Like, sometimes I love losing. I love a game that is really hard, that you lose most the time, and then when you do beat it, it's like, yes, we beat that game.
Yeah. Oh. And yes, Jer, it is Illuminati, the card game. It's by Steve Jackson Games. Mm-hmm.
Well, they're two different Illuminatis. There's the regular Illuminati, then there was Illuminati New World Order. So not New World Order, but the classic Illuminati.
Which is now, there's a second edition or something. I don't even know.
Do we? I think neither one of us has it, right?
No, neither one of us has it.
Yeah.
I saw it at Gen Con last year and was like, I don't really want to buy it, which was a good choice because I didn't have room in my suitcase.
Krellin says that I'm going to like Wrath of the Righteous when I get to it in 2037. That's probably true, but I want to play it now. I want to play through... I want to play them. Yeah, no, I really, there's something, although, gosh, I liked, I do enjoy Sagrada. That's fun.
Yeah. But I find the shorter games aren't as, like, memorable sometimes. Because there's not as much build up to the end, and there aren't as many, like, small moments where you're like, oh, what do I do? Yeah. And then you do it, and you're like, yes! Or you don't do it, and you're like, that was the worst thing. Yeah.
Anartabe says, I want to play every RPG ever I can get my hands on. I understand that. Anartabe asks, which RPGs you've played the most? Ooh.
Which RPGs? Like tabletop RPGs?
Yeah, tabletop RPGs.
Well, I haven't played anything for very long because, like I said, my GM, this is his experimental group.
Yeah.
So, like, at most, I play something for, like, 6 months. So the one I played the most was Warhammer Fantasy. We didn't play Scum and Villainy for very long because our group could only fight things. It was really bad. Like, one of our characters, he didn't die, but he got lost because he overindulged.
Oh.
And so he was lost. So our player had to make a new character, and her new character was a diplomat, a noble diplomat.
Okay.
And she tried to talk her way out, and she could only roll 1s and 2s.
Oh, that's bad.
Yeah, so we got to a station, like a security station, and she was like, let me in. I'm on official business. She rolled like a 1, and she rolled like 1s and 2s, and we were just like, what do we do? And then I tried to sneak away, but I failed to sneak away. So they were like, you stay there. How many of you are there? And it was really bad.
Wow.
We failed a lot.
Wow. That you should play GURPS.
Yeah.
It's a bell curve. 3d6. Yeah. I'm just saying. Fate's 46, right? 40 fudge, so that's still a nice good bell curve.
No limbs lost in Warhammer. I think there were no limbs lost, but 2 of our characters had their faces turn into the face of a pig.
Oh. Pig faces. Okay.
Yes. One of them got a pig snout, and one of them got like a full-on pig face.
To answer your question, NRW, I would like to say that the game I've played the most is GURPS, but I actually don't know if that's true. I like to think that it is, right? In my mind, that's the one that I've done, but it actually might be Call of Cthulhu. I might have done. It's either Call of Cthulhu or GURPS. I would say like the top three I've done the most would be Call of Cthulhu and GURPS, and also because that is also life, probably Dungeons. Well, I did a lot of Vampire. I'll just say my top four: GURPS, Call of Cthulhu, Vampire, and Dungeons and Dragons are the top four that I've done the most. I would say. It's hard to know because it's been like it's hard to know.
Yeah.
It's hard to know sometimes.
Well, how long have you been playing Call of Cthulhu? Like, because you do it, what, once a month?
Once a month for about 6 hours at a go. And Rissa and I have been playing this campaign. Rissa, I've got too much range. You know what? Actually, I can tell you. I can tell you exactly when I started because I have got because I'm the note taker. And my first notes, I think, were in quick look. Yeah, I think it was 2013.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
that is a long time.
Yeah,
play one game.
2013, because 2007 I was not out of LA yet. So we've been playing this game, and please note, I did not start this game. I came in later. So the game was running before I started playing it. So she was running it since maybe 2007.
Okay.
But I couldn't, she invited me to play, but I couldn't play because I was leaving. And then in 2013, I joined remotely. So I've been playing that game since 2013. But I started playing Call of Cthulhu probably in, 88, 89, 88 probably. So,
wow.
Yeah, I've been, but then of course.
Before I was born.
Thanks a lot. Thanks. But I feel like there's but then you don't play Call of Cthulhu for a while. Like I played it for like 2 years, then joined the army, and then yeah, you have been a great guest. Let me ask you before, because we're like getting there. It wasn't before I was, because Krellin was born around my time. In the time
we're old, says Rissa.
I like to think of ourselves as just I don't know, what do wines do? They age. That doesn't sound good either.
Probably not.
So I will say, so you've got this whole thing that's happened, right? That you've through board gaming. We were born in the long, long ago before the dark times. We're seasoned. So through RPGs and board gaming, through this sort of tabletop space that is part of this new world, you have found lots of new people. You have discovered new skills that you have. You have given back to the community through playtesting. You participate in forums about various games. You add value. You are super. You have a lot of leadership skills now that have grown since I've known you. In terms of just teaching people and organizing, and there's just a lot of stuff that has happened throughout all of this. So what does gaming mean to you in 2019?
So I would say, for me, it's a community thing. It brings people together. I mean, I know myself every day, so I don't see a lot of the changes that maybe you've seen. So I wouldn't have said that I have significantly better leadership skills. To me, gaming is still how it gives me a way to interact with people that I wouldn't normally have, because I find it really difficult. Like, I'm an introvert to begin with, but I'm also like, no, I'm also kind of shy in, like, especially in big groups where I don't know anyone. I'm like completely overwhelmed, and I'm like, I don't know how to talk to people. But if you give me a game to play, I can be like, sure, I'll play this game. And so for me, it's a way to connect with people. That's what gaming is.
That makes me so happy, right? Because it is. And it's so funny. I don't know if you've experienced this, but I hear people all the time who are post-college, in their 20s, and they always say things like, how in the world do you meet people? How do you ever meet people? And I was like, play games with people. Right? Like,
yeah.
And Berto says it's like that for many people, including me. Yeah, and like when people say like they have no idea how to meet people, I always feel like, you could play games. That's a way to meet people.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's also kind of difficult to like I don't have a huge game collection. And a lot of the games I do have are very complicated, because those are the ones where I'm like, I need to figure this out and play it on my own. So it is kind of difficult to like find a good game group, but it's also like that it's absolutely a way to connect with people. And so like if I get like right now I have the advantage of living with people, so I can borrow their games if a friend comes over and I'm like, let's play a game. It was really hard to say. My tongue got like tangled up in itself. But yeah. So I definitely need to get more games that are like easy introductions.
Yeah.
But Anarch Devi says problem with playing with randos is likelihood meeting people who are terrible is really high, especially if it was from the internet. That is absolutely true. But if you meet someone in person and you're like, how do I follow up with them? You can invite them over to play a game.
This is true. By the way, hydrated bot, I'm totally hydrated. I've had like all of the fluids, hydrated bot. Don't worry about me.
We all worry about you.
Like, hydrated bot gets nervous. Like, just gets a little nervous. I'm excited to play with you a Clockwork Dominion at Gen Con, but also before then. And I'm excited.
Yeah, because you need to practice it.
I do need to practice it. I want to like get my practice on. And so I'm excited about, I also just want to play, I want to play some more war games. I've got games I want to play.
Yeah.
That's all.
But there's so many games. You have so many games, and I don't even know like half your collection. We've played a lot, but I don't think we've played all of them.
We have not played all of them. There are some games we still have not yet played. This is true.
Yeah. And I've still never played Gloom, the card game Gloom.
You've never played Gloom?
No.
Are you sure?
I'm 100% positive.
Well,
I've never played Gloom.
We'll just have to fix that the next game night.
Okay.
I'm going to bring Gloom because it is amazing. And you have to play it.
Okay.
It's amazing.
Because one of our mutual friends has played with you, and she told me about it, and I was like, that sounds fun.
It's really fun.
And then I never played it.
Do we all play simpler games like Flux? We've never played Flux, but we've played things like our simpler games would be something like maybe what's that one? Tiny Epic Galaxies?
Yeah, Tiny Epic Galaxies. I've played Flux before. I really enjoy it. I think it's like a good like sort of de-stress game. We've never played anything kind of like Sushi Go.
Oh yeah.
But sometimes we play like regular card games, like with a bicycle deck, like Spades or.
Oh, we haven't played that in a while, but I do want to play Spades again because that's fun.
Yeah.
Actually, I do think that the game is pretty simple. There's just a lot of thinking.
There's a solo variant of it on your phone called 98 Cards.
I have the solo variant that's the game.
Yeah.
The official one. Baron is correct. Spades is very military. In the military, we would play spades all the time. Like, that was just a thing that you would do. Usually, like, you'd play spades, drink a beverage that was probably alcoholic, and then talk smack about things. Like, that's... that was what you would do. And like, that was... Yeah, I think about the way in which... games really help people bring... Military, prison, or shelter. Yes. All those are all places where people play spades. Yes. And just the ways in which people, like, the games allow you a way to interact with each other, but also learn about each other.
Mm-hmm.
Like, are you a good loser? Are you a sore loser? Are you a good winner? Are you a sore winner? Are you flexible? Are you willing to play different things?
Also, like, how quickly do you pick up on a game? Do you like co-op? Do you like competitive? Like, we have a friend who is somewhat picky about his games. Well, not picky, but like
particular.
Yeah. He I don't even know if he knows what he likes. Like, I don't know if he'd be able to articulate it, but we've spent quite a lot of time figuring out, like, he likes cooperative games. Yeah. He doesn't like games with a lot of hard choices. In college, we had a nearly perpetual Rummy game going in the commuter lounge. I really like Rummy.
Rummy's a good game.
Yeah.
I like it too.
And I like Gin Rummy.
Yeah, me too. Speaking of which, randomly, I was playing Gin, right? Gin Rummy, I think I just called Gin. I played that like last year for the first time in years, just randomly, and I was like, oh, this is really fun.
Yeah.
I really like this game, and I forgot that I liked it so much. And I was like, I want to play card games again. Like, I miss them. They're good. Like bicycle card games, you know? Mm-hmm. Like, those are fun.
They are good. Like, that's what I grew up with. Like, was like a bicycle deck. Like, I had cards all the time. I had a deck of cards in my backpack sometimes too. Like, I always had a deck of cards when I was growing up because that was like what I played.
What were your games?
We played
Gin and Gin Rummy.
Well, I didn't learn those until later, actually. I mean, like, when I was really little, which is what I actually remember, it was like the basic, like, Go Fish and all those. But we also played Egyptian Rat Screw a lot.
Oh, I don't know that one.
Which is you each start with an equal portion of the deck, and then you flip cards. You take turns flipping cards, and then you have to slap. So it was like a very dangerous game. You could get very seriously hurt if someone had sharp nails.
NRW, I would also use cards on my bicycle to make it sound like a motor. I also did that.
I played Rummy 500 a lot more than Gin Rummy.
Yeah.
I played Hearts a lot on the computer.
Oh, I never played Hearts until I was taught it from the game group.
Really?
Mm-hmm. We just never played Hearts. And my grandmother and I would play Rook and Mile Borns. I don't know that one either.
I don't know that one.
And there's a great German game I used to play that I loved called Sheep's Head, Schafkopf. And I love that. And my parents would play Rummy Cube when we were kids. Yeah, and it's funny because I'm thinking about, this is like an interesting, I read an interesting article, just a weird thing, about how Bridge is becoming popular again.
Oh, really?
Yeah, apparently Bridge is becoming popular again. And, Bridge almost died out, I think, right?
Yeah. Well, like, for a really long time, it was, like, a game for old people.
Yeah.
Like, and not you old, like 70s old.
Like 70s old. Pops Joan. It's a fun bicycle card game. Okay. I will look that up. Yeah, and apparently Bridge is making a comeback. And that's interesting. Pope Joan. And it's funny because I've always been... I learned it in Bavaria, Ice Bunny. I learned Schafkopf in Bavaria, and we played it all the time. Bridge
Night is the only gaming my mom does, but she is in her 70s.
But I've always wanted to learn Bridge. It seems very complicated, and I think it's interesting to think about the ways in which games, right, have fashions, right? Like, there was a time when people played a lot of card games. They played Bridge and Whist and hearts and spades and all of that. And then that kind of went out of style, out of fashion a bit, and people stopped playing games. Like kids would play games, but like adults just didn't play games for a while, and now it's really just coming back.
Yeah. Well, it also depends like on the demographic, I think, because like my mom never really played, like she knew some card games, but she never really played them, and she like only knew like the really simple board games. Like she knew how to play Monopoly, but she hated it because it's not a very good game.
It's sorry, it's just not a good game. Doesn't have the range.
But like my dad tried to teach me chess. I never got into chess. Oh, my dad asked me an interesting question about Arkham Horror that I think can be extended to other games, which is there a way to simplify the rules to introduce someone to the game in a similar way that you could simplify chess by removing some of the pieces? Like you could simplify chess by just like removing all the bishops and saying like these don't exist. Learn to play with these pieces, and then you introduce pieces.
I was never introduced to chess in a simplified way. I just was introduced to chess for the full thing, and then I lost a lot until I stopped losing a lot. It was just like constant loss.
Well, but like someone who's never played a complicated board game before, how would you introduce them to something like Arkham Horror?
I think that I would do it in stages. Like I think I would do a game before that one. Right? Like I think I would do Baron Tour is also thrown to chess. Yeah. Like I think that like, because the thing is, once you start playing a certain number of games, you start understanding certain elements, right? Like And so I think that I might build up to the more complicated ones. But also sometimes you just go back to basics, right? Like you don't use all the extensions and all of the expansions, right?
Right.
Yeah, I think I would do an easier game first.
Right, but like chess is always, well, at least when I was growing up, it was chess and checkers.
Yep.
But the difference between chess and checkers is huge.
Yeah, that's right. And Skexy points out that Settlers of Catan has always been a good gateway game. And that, for some reason, that's true. People seem to really enjoy Catan. Like people who are...
Uno.
I
liked Uno.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. I wonder about what about Settlers of Catan makes it a really good gateway game.
Yeah, because it has a lot of elements going on. I don't know. I think also some of the newer ones like Spirit Island might be a good introductory game. Krellin says our go-to game is usually St. Petersburg to introduce.
Oh, I haven't played that one. I should look into it. Fancy Yahtzee or Kingsburg. Oh yeah. I feel like they're these kind of gateway games that once you understand them, then all of a sudden you can get that next. Because I think some of the more complicated games actually aren't that complicated. They just have a lot of moving pieces, right? Like for example, Arkham Horror, the board game. Sorry, Eldritch Horror, the board game.
Yes.
Is not really that complicated at its base. It's just that there are a lot of moving pieces. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but if you have someone who is very familiar with the game running it, you could theoretically introduce someone to it. Yeah,
and you're just like, look, you get 2 moves. You can move. You can do these 4 things. Like
but if it's a bunch of new gamers who are all new to gaming and also new to Eldritch Horror, that would be a disaster. I tried to do that with a group of people, and like I had played Elder Tor like maybe twice, and I was like, I don't really know how this game works.
Yeah.
And they were all like trying to figure it out. And the most complicated game they had played was Betrayal at House on the Hill, or whatever it's called. And Betrayal would be a good one.
Yeah, Betrayal would be a good one. That seems, I think, pretty straightforward. Skexy is saying that it's very different than the American-style board games we grew up with, and introduces very different concepts of the way victory points and resources and trading works. Yeah, Carlin points out Ticket to Ride is a good one. I think that's true. And I think there's something about just the ways in which the games are sort of like what the point is. Because the thing is, a lot of the American-style all of the old school American style board games like Monopoly and Life and all of those things are basically just, they're the same concept. It's roll dice and then move along a board, and then something happens where you land, and that's it, right? And it's like, that's it, right? Like there's not a lot besides move around the board. I mean, like you had more complicated ones like a couple, right? Yeah. Roll dice, move spaces, maybe make a choice. Like that was what you had. And now there are more things like, cooperative games and different victory conditions. And Sorry's definitely like that, right? And I think it's...
Yeah, although I really enjoyed Sorry.
I like Stratego.
As you what?
I liked Stratego because it was different, right? Like Stratego was one where I was like, oh, I need to sort of set up.
Yeah.
That was a good game.
I think I've played Parcheesi like once or twice, which is also one of those move around the board games.
Parcheesi, yep.
Yeah.
Oh, I should try African Star. I like trying new games. I really do. And it's funny because I also like simple games. Like I really like a good variety, right, of like simple games that don't involve a lot of strategy, games that involve a lot of strategy, and then games that involve way more strategy that I don't even have yet, but I hope to get them at some point in time.
Well, there are certain games that seem really simple, but the strategy is very difficult. And then there are certain ones where the strategy is easy, but the game is very complicated. Yes.
And that's interesting. Like, I do find that really fascinating that there's some games that, like, The Grizzled is really simple. It is a simple game. Don't have more than 3 of the same symbol on the board at the same time. That's it.
Yes.
But the strategy is hard. Risk and Axis and Allies straddle that mainstream line with deeper strategy and especially Axis and Allies complexity. I actually have Axis and Allies 1942 on my game shelf, and we have not yet played it, and I want to play it.
Rissa says they don't like Cosmic Encounter, but that may have been who I played it with, which I find interesting because one of my friends, her favorite game is Cosmic Encounter. I've never played it, so I can't.
I've never played it either.
That.
I've also never played Cards Against Humanity.
Really? You would not like Cards Against Humanity.
That's what people tell me. People tell me I wouldn't like it. People who I trust. You know what I mean? Like, people who know me, they say I wouldn't like it, and I'm like, well, I believe you. I will believe you.
It's a party game, which doesn't inherently make it bad, but there's no real strategy to it. And if you've ever played Apples to Apples, it's basically the same thing, except it's a game of who can be the most offensive. And a lot of the time it devolves into that. Sometimes it doesn't, depending on who you're playing with, but a lot of the time it just devolves into that.
Yeah. I've not played Apples to Apples or Bananagrams. Those are ones that some of our more casuals tend to seem to really like. By the way, I do not have Twilight Imperium, but I do have Imperium, which is a traveler war game that you can spend 12 hours playing in one go. I should set up on my table and get someone to play for 12 hours with me. Like, that's a game that will take a while. That is like an old school war game, but it's got all these multiple, like, it's not like, in terms of war games, I've got Africa Corps, which is like a classic war game where one person is the Axis, one person is the Allies, and you're fighting in North Africa. And that's like, it can take a long time, but it's a fairly straightforward war game. Move your units, all that business. Really fun. I like it. But Imperium is that plus, like, you're moving your units throughout the galaxy, but then also when you land on planets, you have planet battles as well. So they're like, it's like multi-level war game. Still fun though. But yeah, Twilight Imperium, 10 hours, I think. Yeah, it's there's some long games, but you know, I want to play another game of diplomacy. We played it once. I want to play it again.
Which one is diplomacy?
That's the one where you negotiate with all the powers about where you're going to place your people. Like you spend like like you do like a 10-minute round of like negotiating where you want to place things, and then you put in your orders. Gang, it is almost 9:30.
It is.
We should go. I want to thank everybody for being here and hanging out with us in Gamer Stories. Next week for Gamer Stories, we have Paladin Hulk. Everybody's favorite mod is going to be here. Paladin Hulk, who's one of a giant, one of the tallest people in the world. Because he's Dutch. He will be here next week, but thank you for being here. And I want to thank especially a DSB211. Ooh! Oh! Singing. We have bits. We have bits.
Okay.
We have bits. But I want to thank you for being here and talking to us about your gaming journey. That's amazing. Do you expect to play lots of games in the future?
Yes. I will play all of the games. I will play every single game.
Do you think, I hope that you get to play a lot of cool games at Gen Con, like
I hope
demos?
so too. I hope I at least get to like buy a bunch of cool games that I can then bring to game night.
Yeah.
And
so, everyone, first off, Rissa, thank you so much. And for you, Airway and Hey, the anime. Airway and Hey, the anime. Eve way out gale out way up way xte ute it gale young way. Airway and Hey, the anime. Either I skays or ani say. Old man the adiation pray uyare utre uste angreo. Ewe every eat red landsley, ever brensley, ute day. And when we see the landlord will play at the eye get ray in the IA. We're in the money, we're in the money. We've got a lot of what it takes to get along. And Krill's like, PH is not my favorite mod. That's fair. That is fair. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for those bits.
Thanks for the great questions.
Oh, thank you. You know, and also thank you for being part of my game night for the last 5 years. And like,
well, thank you for hosting it. Like, it was great. We've played so many games together.
We have played so many games, and I want to play more. And we'll do it until you move across the country.
Yeah.
That'll happen.
It'll happen eventually. I'm working on it.
You're working on it. So we can probably catch you on Discord.
Yes, you can. DSB221.
And you don't stream, but maybe we will catch you in a tournament one day. Like, maybe you'll be like at the #1 table for an Arkham Horror tournament that's being broadcast live. I don't know.
I don't think that will happen, but it might.
You'd have to go to Arkham Nights, wouldn't you?
I would.
Me. Oh, so what day is it? Today's Wednesday. Let me tell you where you can find me for the rest of the week. That's true. Maybe you will win GURPS Arena. Because I'm going to run an arena.
Okay.
And maybe you will win GURPS Arena. I don't know. I mean, these are possibilities. So you can find me tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll be doing Night in the Woods. Then you can find me Friday, which is a Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time on the Greyhawk channel for Ghost of Saltmarsh. And then Saturday at noon, you can find me here on this channel for Horizon Zero Dawn as we are coming towards end game of the main campaign. And then on Sunday at like 7 in the morning, I'm flying off to Los Angeles to give an interview. And, I will be back. But I will be back. I don't think I'm actually missing any streams. Because it's just, I'm leaving Sunday, coming back on Tuesday. So
because you don't have any streams on Sunday anymore because you finished Cthulhu Confidential.
that is correct. Whew. So thanks, everybody. Thank you all for being here. Take care of yourselves. I will see you sometime during the week. Thank you so much, Jared. We have a Discord. We also have a Twitter. You can find me at Academic Foxhole on Twitter. And we have a YouTube where there's an archive of all of the stuff. And thanks, everybody, for being here. And, play lots of games. And I will catch you on the flip side. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.